Replatforming is often an essential part of growing any e-commerce business. And since this is the case, I thought it would be awesome to have an expert join the show who has done just this, twice. Rob Johnson, who serves as the principal e-commerce technical program leader at Wyze, which is now a leader in the smart home product sector, hopped on the show to walk me through what it was like replatforming at his previous company, Deseret Book, and his current company, Wyze. Plus, he gave away some insider tips on the changes he made that had the biggest impact on conversions and ROI, and an interesting look into the opportunities to come that are all around, such as building a platform that has consumption and purchase in the same place. But before we dive into this interview, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, who put out the second edition State of Commerce report. It includes tons of insights from thousands of industry leaders, and you don't want to miss it. So go to sfdc.co/commerce insights. All right, let's get into the episode. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Same. So before we get into your work at Wyze, I was hoping you could highlight your journey of where you've been and a little bit about you.
Yeah. So the very beginning of my career, I worked for a small internet marketing company back in 2001 in the UK, where originally is where I'm from. And that was an internet marketing company that focused mostly on e-commerce, but also through direct mail and having direct mail commerce, if you will, where you put in your credit card information or send a check or send cash and buy stuff. Since then, I've done things from news media, where I worked for a media company in Salt Lake City that owned radio stations and newspapers and TV stations. They also owned a retail banner that have 3 banners, about 60 stores, and that's where I worked over their digital and e-commerce for 7 years. And that was a great education, stepping up the e-commerce game, if you will. I kind of got hooked on e-commerce because the value that you can bring is so quantifiable that you can just see these metrics and make some changes and see a massive impact. And really what happened was I worked on search engine optimization, which was when I started in 2001, I did my first e-commerce microsite project and worked on, back then you'd call it today, our CRO, conversion rate optimization. So it was a combination of search engine optimization and conversion rate optimization was my first project that I worked on, and did all sorts of back then black hat things that would be considered black hat today, but were just normal SEO practices back then. And really loved what search engine optimization did, and I worked on that for news media in Salt Lake. And back then, an e-commerce team approached me and said, "Hey, can you do some of that for us?" And in news media, the business model is very, very broken since newspapers started to go into decline and classifieds started going to decline. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to increase the search engine referrals significantly, around 150% improvement year over year. And, that was like pennies, if you will, kind of. But then when I applied that to e-commerce, suddenly we're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars improvement in revenue. And I was just hooked at that point. So I transferred over to that team, ended up leading their e-commerce, worked eventually on the executive team for the company that owned all 3 banners, and then made the move. We actually then as well, we worked on subscriptions, which has been a really fascinating part of e-commerce in the last few years. Subscriptions have really taken off. They've been an excellent form and a very reliable form of revenue. And had discussions with Wyze over the past couple of years, and eventually made the jump over. And it's been a blast working with Wyze, and I've helped them replatform, which is something I did before at my previous gig.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of go back a bit to, it's Deseret Books. Is that how you say your previous company? Deseret Media, Deseret Book?
Deseret Book, yeah.
Okay. Yep. So, I mean, when you were listing off all the things that you've done there, it seems like you've done everything that the industry maybe was interested in, maybe wasn't interested in for a while, and now it's back again. How do you view the landscape when it comes to radio, brochures, like newspaper, all the things that you used to work on? Do you feel like they're coming back, and are you kind of thinking about them today, or is that staying in the past?
Yeah. So radio is an interesting one because they were really worried about podcasts in the early days, and they started to do some interesting things where they would convert their shows into radio podcasts, which I think is a great idea. But they ended up even with the sales revenue that was coming through for their shows, they found that they didn't actually have anything to worry about because it kind of just set to a certain level and hasn't dipped much below that. And they were able to get some incremental value from the podcasts. And so radio didn't really have too much to be concerned about. And if anything, just the format's different. I mean, if you think about books too, that was a big one for us. And that Deseret Book was or is over 150 years old as a company.
Oh, wow.
Very, very well established. The second brand to hit to Utah in the very beginning of Utah, with their newspaper being the first brand of Deseret or of Utah. So very, very interesting. And if anything, no one's reading less. If anything, people are reading more, both news and also with books as well. The format just changes, So, for example, we looked at how engagement was improving or changing. And what we found is that as we added additional media formats to our products, if you will, we actually gained more engagement significantly. Podcasts have been a huge part of that. There's several podcasts that we created. And so in a way, you're trying to disrupt yourself before you're disrupted by someone else. And so that's part of the fun part of how things are changing. If you're just sticking with what you're doing all day, every day, you'll be left behind eventually. So we even ventured into some of the video, kind of instructional video type of things, and played around with that a little bit. And I think they're still working on that, but that was kind of the next phase of basically taking a book but just changing its format. So content is still king. It's just the format and how you deliver it that is changing.
Yep. I love it. So before we go any farther, for anyone who doesn't know what Wyze is, can you explain what it is and what drew you to the company?
Yeah. So Wyze is a smart home company that is famous for its security camera. And it's a camera that can go inside or outside. It's called, the current iteration is the Wyzecam V3. In fact...
Yeah, show it to us
I
if
have
you have
one.
Here we go.
Here we go. So here's the Wyzecam V3. It's just a small little guy. Very versatile in how it can be used. It can be put on outside your home, inside your office. It's weatherproof. It has an incredible DPI and definition and clarity of the image, both in the day and at night. Here is, there's a number of things I love about Wyze. One is that they want to make technology accessible to everyone. And I think my own personal mantra is that good technology gets out the way. So, we want to be humans having a human experience. We don't want to be turning into robots, if you will. And so any good technology allows you to be more human, and it gets out the way and just kind of sits in the background. And one of the great things is that they're working on vision AI type of stuff, right? So if you have one pointing on your porch, let's say, If someone leaves a package, it will tell you, hey, a package has been delivered. Or, hey, we've detected your pet. Your pet just escaped and went out the door or something. Or, hey, here's a person, even to the point where you can have facial recognition and say, hey, such and such just got home, like maybe one of your kids or whatever. Now, the one of the things that we hear of, and this is one of the things that just make you enjoy the company even more, is we had someone who reached out and said, hey, I've not been really a fan of the Internet of Things. I'm not really that type of person, but my Wyze camera just told me that there was smoke in my kitchen. And I ran back home, and because of that alert on my phone, and found that my kitchen was on fire, and I was able to put it out just in time and save my house from burning down.
Wow, that's not a testimonial. Jeez, I don't know
Right,
what is.
exactly.
I hope you guys captured a video of that.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a lot of application even beyond that, that can happen with security. Like, what if it could detect certain things on the premises, certain objects that were there or being held or whatever, and tell you, hey, this is happening, and then that can trigger certain, maybe it locks your home, make sure all the doors are locked and things like that. All sorts of different rules and fun stuff. And honestly, I'm just a big nerd deep down, and I just think it's just really fun stuff. And so now there's an ecosystem that's being built with this type of intelligence and all of this connectivity that can really improve the quality of life, I think. And so the key is with making accessible to everyone is, how do you make it easy enough that even, grandma could do it? And that's the key to the growth, I think. The next phase of growth for Wyze is to make it very simple, friendly, and accessible to everyone.
Yeah, it looks like there's so many products that they're putting out as well. I mean, they've got the doorbell camera, the security camera. Looks like they have a scale. I think, I mean, there were so many things when I looked at the website. I was like, wow, it seems like once you learn it in one format, you're able to just kind of replicate those learnings and put it into other products and make them all pretty smart. And I mean, it was impressive seeing how many products you all have.
Yeah, it is interesting. If you look at, competitors like Ring or Arlo, they don't have the breadth of product offering that we have. And, maybe that's a good thing, and maybe we need to focus more on the things that matter more. But one of the most recent ones that I think was really interesting was the Wyze air purifier. Definitely, it's not a camera. There's no intelligence per se that can have that connects to a camera, but we sold out of that product within a day. And it was just...
What was special about it?
Well, I think what it features, and the thing that people love about Wyze, is that we offer high quality at a really, really low price. I mean,
I saw, some of the prices for these cameras that we're selling. I'm like, how are they making any money?
Yeah, truthfully, the margins, are razor thin, absolutely razor thin. And where the model that we're moving toward is really the subscriptions of having the services that bring the smarts to these devices beyond just, what they have natively on them. So
got it. So you don't mind kind of eating the cost of the hardware if you can have a 10-year like lifetime customer essentially who's reordering the software behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, if we can help secure your home with the services that we have that connect to these devices, tell you when packages arrive and things like that, then the hardware is really just the means to that. And if you think about Xbox, and you think about even Alexa and those things, it's really the same thing. My Alexa's now kicking off, but
hello, Rob.
Yes. It's really the same approach. It's not really a new approach, but it's definitely a daring approach when you are just a startup that don't have the big dollars of the big companies behind them like Microsoft and Amazon.
So earlier you mentioned replatforming. That was a big part of your role. I want to hear, what you did at Deseret Books and what that looked like.
Yeah, you bet. So in the beginning, there was a legacy platform that was made, homegrown legacy platform. And when I first got there, as I was tracking, I was kind of doing my product management type of thing, and found that about 38% of the work that we were doing with our development team was for bugs that kept coming up. And
Wow.
it just...
How much is that in dollars when you start
Exactly.
thinking, what's the
Absolutely.
salary of these people having to fix all these bugs every day?
Right. And that was back in 2011, 2012. And, the big thing that we were saying is, why are we trying to solve a solved problem? And that was the mantra that we had. We're trying to reinvent something that has already been invented, if you will. And are there any solutions out there that that have already solved these problems for us? Because how many people are creating their own carts and creating their own, fulfillment logic and things like that? So back in 2000, I think it was 12, went to New York. We were a Ruby on Rails shop. So lots of Ruby on Rails. Everything was written in Ruby on Rails. And so we thought, hey, let's see what exists out there that's on Ruby on Rails, and let's leverage an open source community so we can have the benefit of owning our software, developing whatever we want on that software, but inheriting all the good stuff that's already been solved, and then also inherit and have the benefit of all the security improvements that are made on that platform. So we went to New York, went to a Spree conference there. Lots of really interesting things were being said and happening that continue to be done today, honestly. Like having, even back then, it was talking about splitting the e-commerce engine from the front end and having APIs basically run all of your front end and just have your back end be just this engine that sits behind the scenes. Then you can serve both your front end for your commerce. You can also serve a front end for your app as well. And then anything else that you want to do, including a point of sale. And so we actually did all of those things. We looked at, we actually started building our own point of sale with this as a back-end commerce. Yeah.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious. And we got pretty far with it. But then the pandemic happened. And suddenly the talent that you have, the value of e-commerce just doubled. Right. And so did all of the people who knew how to do commerce really well. Just like it just kind of exploded. And so, our team over time kind of just went off in different directions, just because the market was just absolutely, red hot. And then we were kind of left with this, okay, we've done a ton of stuff. We did our own in-store fulfillment. We had 60 stores. We did in-store fulfillment, buy online, pick up in store. All of that was homegrown that we'd made. We had
like a little Frankenstein commerce product.
Yeah,
you built
absolutely.
yourself.
Well, and so many of those exist out in the wild. There's so much nuance to the way that businesses have done things for so many years. Because there's not been any really core solution that's been flexible enough, or has guided kind of the standards, if you will, of retail. So, for example, your loyalty programs might be very different from store to store, that have really nuanced things that don't exist just out of the box today. So, as that change happened with the cost of resources and the cost of full-time employees, you've got to think now with that, with hosting and security and GDPR and CCPA and all of these things are just continuing to build up. All of these things are very costly. And so, I did an analysis and said, okay, well, now we've done really well with this open source platform, and it's been fantastic. Do we continue with that and just kind of continue to look for talent that can help us with that as those costs increase? Or do we look for a solution that has been solved, and maybe a lot of the problems that we don't want to have to deal with, like security and uptime and response times and all the optimizations of the back end. Can we just focus on what we do best, which is just commerce, and let someone else take care of all of that? And what does that look like? How many FTEs is that equivalent to? And that was the exercise that we went through and found that, yeah, I mean, now more than ever, there's more, it makes more sense to switch to something that can take care of the boring things, if you will, so you can focus on the customer facing things. And so we made the decision to migrate to a solution. And the key is, when you look at solutions, the key is that you want to look for something that gives you that flexibility. Ideally, something that's really well documented from an API perspective, and something where you can really self-serve, I believe. You want to have something that tells you, hey, here's how this works and that works, without having to talk to people. Because people are super expensive. And, I think it speaks volumes when a product just does what it says it does and shows you, you can just read how it works and you start playing with it and you're off to the races. I think that's the real key of growth for these SaaS platforms that are moving forward. So yeah, that's kind of the story with how we kind of, at least we were thinking, why we made changes from moving all the way from a homegrown solution through open source through ultimately a SaaS product that was, owned by another company.
Okay. So while you were doing that at Deseret Book, what was the solution you ended up going with, going from your homegrown and then figuring it out, and then you picked something that was already working? What did you end up using?
Yeah. So homegrown Ruby solution to Spree Commerce, which is a Ruby on Rails open source platform that then we changed over to Solidus.io, which is the same platform, but has opinions that are a little bit different. And then we switched over to Salesforce Commerce, and we added CRM. Actually, it's a very interesting story because it's all nerdy, but I think this is what the show's all about, right?
I like nerdy. We're gonna go there.
Cool. Yeah. So one of the things we have, because we had 60 stores, so you have a point of sale, you have a loyalty system. And you want to connect that loyalty system and have one experience for the customer, whether they're in the store or online, right? And the problem is you have disparate systems. So the customer relationship management tool that you're using needs to also talk to your e-commerce and also to your point of sale. And so, marrying all of those things together is pretty challenging. And so a lot of retailers and other folks decided, hey, let's do a customer data platform that takes all this customer data from all these different systems and makes sense of it, merges it into one golden record, if you will, and then allows you to basically have and create the same experience across all these platforms. And then it would update, your e-commerce, it would update your point of sale, it would update your applications that you have, it would update, other marketing channels like Facebook and Google and all the, hundreds of places you can go with that. What we decided to do was, instead of trying to have all these disparate systems talk together, why don't we just simplify the stack and go and have basically one core CRM that would serve both point of sale and also your e-commerce. And so we decided to go with Commerce Cloud for commerce, also use a partner that works with Salesforce CRM for the point of sale, and have everything kind of just simplify it and have everything talk to this core CRM, which removes the need for a customer data platform because you're simplifying that stack. And so that simplification was something we talked to at length with various implementers and various clients and things like that. And it cleans things up. We also use their order management solution, which would improve. And one of the big things maybe we'll talk about later on, is the importance of customers knowing when and where product is, when they're going to receive it, where it's located. And the order management solution with their stock level layer that's built into that is a real a big checkbox for us in terms of knowing where all that product is. I mean, we had Deseret Book has 60,000 saleable SKUs at any given point.
Wow.
And you have 60 stores, and so you're like, where is everything?
Yeah.
It's a big, fairly large technical, problem to solve. And so you're looking for a partner who understands that, who's worked with big clients before. I think for some of the open source things, you've got to make sure you right size the solution for your business. And I would say that Deseret Book, what we struggled with was we're in a very awkward size, because we're kind of an SMB. We're kind of medium-ish sized, but we have requirements that are fairly enterprise level. And so picking the right solution is a fairly tricky thing to do with all of the demands and requirements that we have. So went with Salesforce and went with an implementer that has been excellent so far. And I have since moved on, but I know that I still keep in touch and know that that's been a good experience for them.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Thank you for highlighting that journey. So when you went from Deseret, 100-plus-year-old company, and then you went to Wyze, like, what was the mindset shift like that you had to maybe change, especially when you're coming in and maybe auditing their e-commerce practices, or you said you replatformed again. Like, how did you have to kind of think differently when going to, more of a startup? I think it's, Series B is what they've raised so far, and definitely very different than a company that's 100 years and 126 years old, or how old was it?
150. And it's probably more like 160 now. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What was that like?
Yeah. So my first thing was realizing how some of the processes were just not there. And that's going to happen, right, between an old company and a new company. When I arrived, actually right before I went, I was asked to help architect the migration from Magento, and that decision had already been made. And so that was kind of the, hey, how do we connect our iOS app and our Android app and our e-commerce and our other React apps that we have? How do we put all of this together, and how do we do fulfillment, and how do we do order management and things like that? And so
that's a lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Right up front.
Right up front. And I was, to be honest, a little panicked by it, because it's a lot to learn a company so quickly to make the decisions that really we're dealing with a lot of revenue. A lot of revenue, a lot of orders, and any downtime is going to be problematic. So when I moved over to Wyze, it was pretty stressful to make sure that everything was going well, and to learn a company so quickly and how everything works, especially when you're remote as well. There's no office, so you're obviously you're looking at documentation, you're looking at all these UML diagrams, trying to understand how does this all piece together, and what are some of the pain points that exist today that we need to improve. And so anyway, all of those migrations have been done, which has been great. And I mean, I've only been at Wyze for 5 months, and we started that migration process. I think we launched to the new system. It was February, and just towards the end of March, we migrated fully. So it was a pretty hefty month of work. And the key has been to the changes, the speed of which things need to happen is much faster. There's less worry about making a mistake, and it's more focus about driving change and improvement and trying things out. It's much more it's kind of more fun, because you're kind of you're kind of going crazy. It can be fun, it can be stressful, but the great thing is that we've just had a lot of autonomy to just go out and make changes and make improvements. So from the very, from the very beginning of adding something to your car all the way through fulfillment, all of that has changed apart from our 3PL partners. So it's been a fantastic, project to work on. And it's been a really, I think we're in a really good place. We've seen really good improvements. We've shortened down our fulfillment times, and anyway, I could go on, but it'd be boring. But it's been awesome.
I do want to hear about the improvements that attributed to the largest ROI. Like, what changes did you make where you were like, wow, that was surprising how big of an impact that had on the company, or orders, or top line revenue, whatever it may be?
Yeah. So some of them were just pain points that were from their previous Magento implementation that they struggled with. In many ways, it felt like I was at the beginning of my time at Deseret Book, because they were on a system that seemed to be groaning with bugs and issues that they were having at that time. And you're going to experience that when you have significant growth. So when you had to deploy changes, it took a long time. If you had a new product that was to go out to the public, it took like a month to get that ready.
Wow.
And it just the way that it was done was very handcrafted and all of that. And it took a long time to make changes and all of that stuff. And one of the big benefits, when you move to a system that kind of has the content management all built into it, and you can leverage those tools without having to do custom code, is you actually lower the bar of entry for people to help and do things. So strategically, a really significant part of this is handing the keys, if you will, and empowering teams that are responsible for merchandising, or responsible for products, and saying, here you go, have at it, right? Now suddenly their key metrics that they're over, they have direct access to be able to make those changes. Yep. And that has made a significant deal. So I was brought on to help with things like conversion rate optimization. Well, first overall architecture, then conversion rate optimization, and A/B testing was part of that. And one of the changes I made was I set up the A/B testing, got all the tools and everything built in, and then I showed one of our product merchandisers and said, here's how you do it. And he's now just taken off doing like multiple tests
that's
daily.
Nice.
And that's my favorite thing, is empowering teams to be able to do what they need to do. And I feel like over the past 12 years of e-commerce work, my job has been to empower teams to be able to do what they do. Because then, instead of having tickets and project managers and all of that stuff, you remove all of that, and they can just get to work, and you see really great results. So like today, in our stand-up, one of the product merchandisers said, hey, I've been doing these tests, and I found that when I moved this around and I put a video here, we got an increase of like 68% in conversion clicks. And it's just music to my ears when I see people who make those changes, make those designs, be able to get the data and understand it themselves and just run. And like organizationally, you're winning, you're racing at that point. So minimizing, layers between thought and action, and just having it be immediate, you can fly with it. So we did see really great improvement with conversion rate. The big key as well is to, whenever you kind of replatform, you have an opportunity to simplify, and distill down really what it is that you need to provide to the customer. And so speeding up, I always say that, and this is industry wide, that speed is the number one feature. that's what's going to get you a tremendous improvement in conversion rate. So really thinking through what makes a difference for customers, what really should be there, what may not need to be there, and not being afraid to throw things out and shake things up is always a great opportunity.
Yep. I love that. Are there any big projects you're working on right now that you're super excited about, but you don't know if it'll really have the outcome that you're desiring? Like it's a big bet and kind of like a test.
Yeah. So one of them right now is migrating a subscription services. So we're migrating from one service to another, and the idea is that the customer doesn't really notice a difference, except that we can now speed up and add subscriptions easily to. Really, it's we're getting hardware and software or service, and we're sticking them together as much as we can.
Yep.
And how do you make it so that you have more flexibility in how you manage the merchandising of that, how you manage all of the behind the scenes of how you connect all of that together? How do you help customers more easily? So, for example, every camera that's there's a license you buy for it to then have all of the good AI stuff that you want with it. If I suddenly have 4 other cameras, how do I easily just add more licenses to my plan? How do we make that process as simple as possible? And so we've moved to another subscription service to help with that. But in some ways, it's like, well, can we make it so that it's going to improve serviceability, or does it make it easier for customers to manage, and does that have an upside to it, or is it not going to make a difference at all, and all of this work is for nothing? So
yeah, I don't know. I'm betting on it's definitely going to be worth it. I mean, I can think of so many times right now where hardware and software, like it's not working well together, whether it's my Sonos speakers that's for some reason always drop off, out of the app, don't work with Spotify, thinking about, Amazon Kindle. Like I bought a book on like the desktop today and it's definitely not showing up on my phone Kindle app. I'm like, well, where'd it go? It's just out in the ethers floating around trying to make it to my phone, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it's when you think about the convergence of all these different technologies, or even if you think about like B2B and B2C, like expectations are now the same. Shopping behavior is like pretty similar. People want a great platform, regardless of if it's B2C or B2B. Same thing with like hardware and software. If I buy a, camera, I better see it instantly in my app and be able to get the license and move things around. And so yeah, I'm betting with you that that's going to be a worthwhile project.
Yeah, definitely. Moving millions of subscriptions over is always, that migration process is always nerve-wracking, takes a while. But yeah, I ultimately, and this is actually, this is a similarity between Wyze and my previous gig, is that you want to bring in a service with your hardware. So it might sound weird, but with books, you've got books, but you've also got ebooks and you've got audiobooks. When you're shopping, and Amazon do this with video, when you're shopping for a particular movie, you also have the ability to watch the movie right there on the product page. So having kind of like your consumption and your purchasing happen in the same place has always been very interesting to me. So, thoughts, back then it was thoughts of like, well, if you can find the book, but also if you own the book as an ebook or as an audiobook, you could read or listen to it right there. How do you do that? How does Wyze do that? Well, we have a web viewer now for all of your connected cameras. So we can connect as you come to the site. You can also take a look and go look at your own, alerts and things, and view the cameras that you've got set up. You can also, when you buy a camera, immediately at the same time in one click purchase the service that goes with it, and that's a free trial, right? So you buy a camera, you get a free trial, and it comes together in one in one click type of thing. So, you know, putting hardware and software together is, I think, a really interesting next step. Like the whole consumption and purchase in the same place has always been fascinating to me, because I think, you know, if you just look at like a store experience and you put it online, I think you're missing out on a whole bunch more. That was my beef with ebooks, really, is like, if it's just words on now a screen instead of paper, I think you're missing a whole bunch of stuff, right? So, you know, we worked on things like embedded video, embedded audio, you know, high resolution images that you can zoom in and do stuff on. We did tagging of text and notes and all of that stuff, even before Kindle did, actually, which was kind of fun. And it was really popular. But, you know, if you're just trying to change that experience and make it the same thing and not take advantage of that particular medium, I think you're missing out on a bunch. And so I think that's where, for me, e-commerce is interesting, because even all of the big giants, even Amazon.com, right? Huge. They've got all the traffic right now, you know, and that's what makes them so powerful. But they can't do some of these things that are unique, that maybe deepen the relationship you have with your customer. You know, what is it that your experience could give a customer that, you know, would provide additional value and give them a reason to come back again and again? So that was my thought with books. It was like, well, what if your library and your shop is the same place? You know, instead of it just being, oh, here's the shop, here's the library. What if we could put those together? It's kind of like what Barnes and Noble do in the retail sense. You know, they have the coffee shop, and then they have the store, and it's more of an experience. It's not just about looking at books. It's about spending time as if you're in like just an awesome library that you can just, you know, wander around. How do you create that type of experience with commerce? That for some reason always keeps coming to my head, and thinking, what's the best way to take advantage of this platform? Because it's seemingly limitless, you know.
Yeah. Wow. So what are you doing at Wyze right now to create that experience?
Well, so currently, you know, as we've recently migrated, we're continuing to expand the services, joining them with the hardware. You know, and the thing I think we've got to do more of a job of, in fact, we just talked about this morning. I said, you know, what's our best product that we have? Is it this? No, it's the app. That's the product. That's the best product. That's really why people want our stuff, is because the app unlocks all of it. And so I think we've got to make sure that we promote the services and what the app does with our hardware, so that people can connect and go, oh, that's how it all fits together. And in the beginning, Wyze has been kind of a grassroots, homegrown, you know, smart camera company. A lot of the fans of Wyze know how to do all of this. They love it. They've embraced it. They're fantastic. Now, as we penetrate more into the market, we're, you know, the third biggest smart home or smart camera company. We've got to now make sure that people who may not be as connected and know how all of this stuff works, how do we help them know how it works and get it set up without professional installation and things like that? Make it easy for them. That's really probably the next step we've got to take to continue to have the growth that we're having.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Well, Rob, this has been super fascinating. Thank you for sharing your journey, your previous journey, and where you all are headed right now. I mean, yeah, thank you so much. And until next time, where can our listeners find out more about you and Wyze?
Oh yeah, Wyze.com is just WYZE if you're from the UK, and ZE if you're from the US.
Yeah, or just look at Rob's shirt right now. Anyone who's looking at this on YouTube,
there
you go.
It's right there. I forgot. Yeah, and then myself, I'm on Twitter at Rob Kellis, ROBKELLAS, and also I'm just robkjohnson.com if you're super interested. So.
Oh, we are. Thanks so much, Rob.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been great, Stephanie.
I want to quickly thank our sponsor, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, for help making this podcast possible. If you're looking for the #1 platform for all things commerce, there's no better choice. So definitely go check it out at salesforce.com/commerce.